Hi, this is Jaya. In this video, we shall see the summary of The Greater Common Good by Arundhati Roy. This is a non-fiction and she says that it is a war for the rivers, mountains, forests of the world. And in this book, Roy debates on development and questions the anti-democratic character of the Indian state. She critically analyzes the use of terminologies such as national interest, common good, and modern as a rhetorical tool to legitimize specific development goals. She talks here about the struggle against the Narmada Dam. And here in this book, she talks mainly about the political economy of dam construction and the politics of developmental aid. She argues that in general, there are two broad categories of people. One set of people will say that if it is modern, rational, and progressive, then development is a must for the country. On the other hand, we have the people who think about the people. They say if it is going to benefit, then the development is okay. Otherwise, what is the use of having a development which is not going to be progressive in the lives of the people who live there? And here in this book, Roy insists on focusing on specific facts about the specific issues in the specific valley. She says that when we say specific, we should know the history of the space, the geography, its tradition, and the way of living of the people and their multifarious everyday relationship with nature. Everyone who are living in the particular ecology will have a relationship with it. And therefore, she says that when you bring in big activities, saying that this will bring the development of that place, then we first have to think about the people's struggle and resistance. Why are the people struggling for that place? Why are they resisting the development? They will have a reason. We should also consider that when we are thinking about the development. And in this book, she concentrates on the details, chronology, and parallel histories of the big dam construction under the tutelage of development. And she says that we are saying that we have to have development in the country, only then we will be equal to the West. But at the same time, we should also know that all these are accompanied by political choices. And the main question is, she asks, who wins or who loses? And what cost is paid by whom? And who benefits from what? The debate over the dam can not be answered or cannot be questioned as a single question, because it is a complex web and there are so many multi-layered Indian democracy nature that encircles, because Indian democracy is something based on the faith of millions of people. And here when we talk about all these claims, when we are talking about a dam construction or anything, now we are thinking about the ownership, the distribution, and the redistribution of natural resources. Then when we think about all that, the question Roy wonders is, who really owns this land, its rivers, and its forest? Of course, we will say that the state only is having the legitimacy of ownership, and therefore it can decide about thinking about the principle of the common good. But unlike that, when we think about the aspirations of a nation, the people who actually enjoy all this is those who are in power, those who are in dominance, and those who are in leadership. And though they are not the legal owners of the place, they enjoy the benefits of that place legitimately. And therefore, when we think about who is actually enjoying it or benefiting it and who is carrying out all these orders, the people who are carrying out whatever the state is saying is the police, the bureaucracy, and the courts. But when we think about the people who are getting affected, and when we are asking many questions, there are no answers for it. They are not bothered about the people who are getting affected by this. They are not thinking about the people who are relocated from the natural environment to a different place. And when we are going to construct a dam project, the state actually penetrates deep into the village life and alters its political economy. Roy says that generally we say that India lives in a villages. But Roy says India does not live in a villages. India dies in a villages because it is these villages which are exploited so that the cities will be revived. The villagers have no part in any decision making, but they are also citizens of India and they are the actual stakeholders of that place. And villages are generally treated as experimental rats by these global and national experts. The World Bank Committee reports that when we are making a plan for a multi-purpose dam, then we generally exclude human and environmental conditions while we are planning it. And the intervention of the specialist will give concrete examples of the devastating ecological changes these dams can bring. And when she talks about the Land Acquisition Act of 1894, which was later amended in 1984, it says that national rehabilitation policy is not at all considered by Indian democracy, because Indian government is not legally bound to provide a displaced person anything. It only gives a cash compensation and it gets a clean sheet to carry forward whatever it wants to do with that land. The banal way in which cash compensation is awarded also is not to the actual person who is living there. They give it to people only who have the legal documents, but not to the tribal populace who have been living there for generations, but they do not have any legal documents. But they are the ones who are stripped away from their natural habitat and they are sent to some other places. And the government does not even have the number of these people who have gone. But they are the people who are displaced by the name of dam construction or national progress. And Roy asks, without knowing how much it costs and who is paying for it, how can progress be measured? Because if you are saying there is progress, we should say for whom it is a progress and how much progress is there. But when you don't even know the number of people who are displaced and what happened to them after they are displaced, how can we say that this place progressed? And when they ask this question about who these displaced people are and where do they go after being displaced, it's a very moving question, because the Commission for Scheduled Caste and Tribes says that 60% of these displaced people are tribals. That is, people who have lived there for generations and generations. The ancestors all would have lived there and they had survived well in that place. But now these people are displaced. And where do they go is generally they will go and live in the slums of the great cities. And because they are moved and they are only used to this tribal life and they are not equipped well to live a good life in these cities, they provide a pool of cheap labors to the rich people who are living in those places. And the myth, local pain for national gain, has become a common knowledge when these big dams worldwide are constructed. Because dams are not considered as a pinnacle of modern civilization, but it is just a rather cemetery for the poor, disenforced and dispossessed populace. And we say that India is the third largest dam builder in the world. And one of the main reasons for this is the easily available loans given by the World Bank in the form of developmental aid. But Roy argues that India has paid more than it has taken from the bank, because according to the World Bank report 1993 to 1980, India has paid $1.475 billion more than it has received. Then the goal of greater common good served by aid actually ended in greater harm than good to the general populace. And Roy says that the Indian state is not a state that has failed. It is a state that has succeeded impressively in what it set out to do. That is, it has served only the elites. Roy argues that state is not the solution, but the state is the creator of the problem. And she also argues that the state is duly responsible for creating structures that not only produce poverty but also act as an instrument to pit poor against the very poor, while the rich really enjoy. They are the government's way of accumulating authority, a brazen means of taking a farmer's wisdom, water, land, irrigation, and gifting it to the rich. Narmada is not a separate case. This is what is happening all over the world. And Roy says that the tale of this big dams worldwide has the same stories, and it has the same actors who are involved in it, and it has the same kind of violence which is involved there. And a nexus of politicians, bureaucrats, and dam construction companies, which Roy calls the Iron Triangle, cemented by institutions such as World Bank, are the reason for all this. And the rhetoric remains the same, enshrining the greater common good of the nation. She calls upon the hypocrisy of the Western world who march against human rights violation in countries like China but wipe their hands off while it's cashing on the mass displacement of millions of people during dam construction. The Narmada Valley Dam project, widely known as the greatest environmental disaster, laid naked the inability of a system to provide social and environmental justice. The dam submerged biodiversity, the world forest comprising of teak, bamboo, and agricultural land, and ultimately led to food insecurity, soil erosion, surface water pollution, groundwater depletion, and a large scale disturbance to hydro and geological systems. Despite all the failures of these projects, the obsession with dams continues to play in the corridors of political leadership. And in this era called as the Anthropocene, where we human beings have enormous capacity to impact nature as never before. We go into large dam constructions and cause irreversible environmental damage. We cannot repair it at all. And we do all this to make our life more vulnerable and only for risk ridden. There is so much of risk in this. And she says it is high time to rethink theories such as degrowth, feminist environmentalism, sacred ecologists, and Buddhist economics. Buddhist economics is taking away agricultural land in the name of religion, in the name of God, laying principles of small is beautiful, and many more to see the feasibility of ecologically sensible pro-people development. If you have anything more to add on to what I've said, please write it in the comment box. Like the video, share it with your friends, and if you have not subscribed my channel, please subscribe and support. Thank you.